afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. It's not always easy to plan for the future, but if you're involved in a family business, then estate planning is critical. The transfer or succession of any business presents challenges, but the uniqueness of a family farm makes transferring the farm business even more difficult. To help farm families navigate the transfer process, UVM Extension offers educational workshops, and the professor who leads those workshops is agricultural economist Bob Parsons. It's great to see you again.
Thank you, Judy.
And so you've been working with family farms in New England and New York more than 20 years. Why is transferring the farm such an important and complex issue?
One of the things about the farm is, first, the family lives where the business is. And, this whole complex, you spend a whole lifetime about building a business, and you got to figure out, well, how do we transfer the management? How do we transfer the ownership? It's a complex business, as well as having lots of pieces and federal taxes to worry about, too.
So what support do you offer?
We try to support an education program where we introduce the issues of retirement. How do we make sure that there's enough income there for both families? And actually ask the questions that some of the families have a hard time answering. And a lot of times, just a major thing that we do is just a facilitation to try to get the discussion started.
And so you're hosting two farm transfer educational workshops later this month. The first is Wednesday, March 15th at the Three Stallion Inn in Randolph. A second workshop will be held on Friday, March 17th at the Charlemont Restaurant in Morrisville. You can get all the details on those workshops by checking the website. It's uvm.edu/farmtransfer. That's uvm.edu/farmtransfer. You can also call the number on your screen. It's 802-656-2109. For a first-hand account of what happens at the farm transfer workshops, let's join across the fences Keith Silva.
If there isn't enough money, how are you going to make it go?
Yes. Since 1990, University of Vermont Extension has been offering Transferring the Farm workshops in Vermont and New England. The workshops cover estate planning, taxes, and choosing a business model to best suit each farmer's situation.
Me and my wife are pretty well gung-ho. We want to do this, and like I said, we're moving forward with trying to think out what plans and steps we can start to take. I want to have a full understanding of all the options available to us, and this is a great way to start seeing those different options and where we can go next to get more information.
So we're interested in having a little more time off eventually. So we figured we'd get the planning process going while we're thinking of other things we'd like to do. There's a lot of different facets to the whole thing that we weren't really aware of when we began.
Such as?
Well, all of the different ramifications of whether you have the LLC versus the corporation, or whether we wanted to be partnerships, and just all the different ramifications of those different structures. The different things you can do as far as putting the land into those, and the tax ramifications of everything.
It's nice to have UVM Extension here giving us this information in a platform. It's not intimidating. The information is here for us to come get it, and it's given to us. It's laid out in a way that's easy for us to see, and it's very useful to have this information together, whereas maybe with the lawyer I'd get some of it and some of it online, and putting it together would be a little more difficult.
I appreciate the way that UVM Extension is reaching out to farmers and providing us with this information. Like I said, I'm learning from the process, and it's helpful to have somebody pulling the information together for us and providing us with the opportunity to ask questions and get information before we have to pay the lawyers and the accountants.
So it's not.
It's said success breeds success. For these businessmen and women, a farm transfer ensures their business will continue to be successful for generations to come. In Middlebury, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thank you, Keith. If you're just joining us, we're discussing transferring the family farm, and my guest is UVM Extension agricultural economist Bob Parsons. So, Bob, what's your advice to when a farm business owner ought to start thinking about a transfer?
I think whenever you're mid-age, it is you start thinking about what is the future of this business in 10 years and 20 years. And if your children are interested, start try to encourage them to be involved. But it's also important to identify if you don't have children that are interested in the business, Can you bring in someone else into the business? Or what is your business plans for the next 10 years? And so this is a very important aspect as you're planning, but you need to get started early in thinking about how you would do this and how you would kind of phase out of the business and start, because if you're building a partnership, and you want to train your partner, you want to get them in on all the management aspects of how this farm is so that they can learn those little visual aspects that you learned over 20 years of experience.
Because what's likely to happen to a farm if the owner dies without a transfer plan in place?
Usually, most likely, that farm is going to be sold. And there again, you have the termination of the farm business, because failing to plan is planning to fail. And that means that business, the family doesn't know, well, who's supposed to take over. There may be no one really designated to lay over, and it has to be all part of the estate plan, part of the will, part of the gifting process, trying to get this person to that they own part of the business, and also everybody knows about it also in the family.
In the best case scenario, how long does it take to develop and agree on a transfer plan?
A lot of times it takes maybe 5 years to even get get the pieces in place. Some of them take longer than that, because you end up starting to transfer. Okay, we start building the transfer, we transfer the management, and then we start transferring some of the assets, and that may take years to really get done. And then you might end up waiting for the death of the older one to older generation to kind of get a benefit of a step up in basis at death before the real estate is transferred. So may take a couple of years to really get the plan in place. This might be 30 years for a plan to really transverse, and we have some farms that the middle generation is starting to bring in the younger generation, while the older generation hasn't really stepped out yet.
Is there a common denominator for what goes to a successful transfer?
One of the big things is communication. We have to be able to talk about this. We have to be very realistic. Is this business enough to support the families that are involved with it? And because we have to be honest about those things and realistic, and it's part of a business plan. This business has to grow from supporting one family to 2 families and maybe 3 families. And so that involves a lot of constant communication of who's doing what, but also everybody doesn't really necessarily want the farm given to them. They would just like to have a roadmap of which direction are we heading, and what are the mile markers along that route.
Well, as we mentioned, we've helped develop a lot of farm families and have them navigate and negotiate a transfer plan. In 2015, Bob was involved with the transfer of a landmark Vermont farm and farm stand in Rutland County. Keith Silva tells us more about that.
The name on the barn is more than a sign. It's a legacy of success.
The farm had been in the Wood family since 1890. The farm stand in its early incarnation was a restaurant, and also cabins where places used to come and stay from the big city of Rutland.
John Satz is the first person not named Wood to own Wood's Market Garden in Brandon. Satz bought the farm from Bob and Sally Wood.
When we were sitting at the negotiating table, i.e. the kitchen table, and talking with Bob about, I think it was how to allocate funds and things on the contract, and I asked him point blank, I asked him, I said, Bob, are you okay with me keeping the name Wood's Market Garden? I remember Bob saying to Sally, she'd walk in the kitchen not long after, and she said, Sally, what do you think about John keeping the farm name Wood's Market Garden? And Sally, without a pause, just turned around and said, well, if he can keep up the quality, sure, that would be great. And I think it said volumes to them wanting to see it continue, and yet, the strength of what they felt, quality of their products was really foremost on their minds.
Satz got to know Bob and Sally a few years before asking them about buying their business. But before he could do that, he had to convince himself.
When I first encountered the farm, I said, wow, this is great, this is fantastic, but boy, this is a lot more than I'm looking to spend or able to even borrow right now. It is really kind of where I want. It was ironic to me. It was where I would like to be in 10 or 20 years. And looking at different farms, I realized there's a lot of different advantages and disadvantages to every property, but it took some time, and it took some whittling away one by one of a property, why it would work, why it wouldn't work, and it basically came up to why it wouldn't work. And when I got here, I think I almost wanted to say why it wouldn't work, and it got to the point where, like, you're nuts. This is everything I've been looking for. How do we make it work?
So how many acres do you have here altogether?
The farm's about 150 acres.
Bob Parsons is an agricultural economist with the University of Vermont Extension.
Most people that are looking to try to get into a farm business are just like John. They don't have any equity. They don't have a big cash, and they don't have rich parents. And if you don't have that combination, it's pretty hard to get started into farming.
In his initial attempts to get financing, Satz discovered traditional lenders like banks were a roadblock.
The business itself wasn't worth anything to a bank. When I talked to a couple banks, there wasn't really necessarily a lot of assets. Banks don't look at a business necessarily as assets. I didn't have customers or inventoried accounts. But I, as a grower, knew there's nothing more valuable than a reputation, which was incredibly positive with the way Bob and Sally ran this business for so many years and the quality of their product that they were putting out. So even though it didn't have a value to the bank, to me it was a no-brainer how much that added toward the viability of the business.
Satz took what he calls a three-legged stool approach to finance his purchase. The Vermont Community Loan Fund was willing to be more flexible with financing than the banks. Satz used funds from the Lotta Crabtree Foundation, which gives money for ag businesses to University of Massachusetts alumni. But it was a third investor that would secure this property in perpetuity.
And then the third leg is without a doubt the Vermont Land Trust, which without them, none of it would have been possible either. And it was an easement sale simultaneously when we were going through a closing with Bob and Sally. So I was able to sell the development rights on the farm, and that, as much as anything, made it happen.
Before the farm was sold, Satz put up greenhouses to prepare for his first season. His willingness to invest in infrastructure demonstrates the faith he had in the sellers, and in turn, the trust the sellers had in their buyer.
Bob and Sally were phenomenal. I can't give them enough credit. I felt like it was still a family farm, that they had just made that step to kind of hand it over. And they were there with a helping hand and advice, but never so forceful in my face. They let me walk off a cliff a couple times, and they were busy in their own lives too, so it wasn't like they had nothing else to do. If I'd started from scratch, the business would have, I'm sure, gone in a different direction than it is now. But to have started from where they had it, I had to respect that and be open to that to keep going.
Few farm transfers are as fortuitous or as smooth as the sale of Woods Market Garden. As an agricultural economist, Parsons takes a more practical approach to good fortune.
Somebody will say, they were lucky, all the moons and stars just lined up right at the right time. That seldom happens. What we had here is somebody that was prepared. The owners, they were deciding to get out of the business, but they really wanted to preserve the name that's part of their community. It wasn't just like, well, we're going to cash in and walk away. It takes a lot of character for somebody that has been boss for all these years to actually come down and see someone else running his business differently than what he did. And just giving a little bit of advice, knowing when to give the advice and when to shut up, too.
To keep his business sustainable, Satz has made investments in green energy technologies, new ways to continue a tradition of farming that's been going on here for over a century.
I think everybody who has an energy-intensive business looks at the cost. You can't avoid that. You're writing the checks. It's not just necessarily that it's alternative energies; it's energies that hopefully will make sense over the long run. We've taken the opportunity to track down some grants that kind of helped us do some experiments. So our boiler and our greenhouse has been helped a lot with the USDA CIG grant. The solar panels, I think it's just something that kind of a no-brainer at this situation in time. There's people who are out there willing to make the capital investments. We just have a PPA, power purchase agreement, on those. So those are something that we don't have a penny into. They're up, they're running, we get a discount on our electric bill, and we have the opportunity to buy that infrastructure back in about 5 to 10 years. So we'd like to see that contribute to the farm and have some healthy alternatives for the future, certainly.
The legacy of Woods Market Garden didn't occur by chance. It took hard work, determination, and a willingness to see things through. It's what happens when preparation meets opportunity. In other words, it's a sign of success. In Brandon, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Thank you, Keith. And a reminder, there are 2 upcoming farm transfer workshops. The first is Wednesday, March 15th in Randolph. The second is on Friday, March 17th in Morrisville. You can get all the details on those workshops by checking the website uvm.edu/farmtransfer, or you can call the number on your screen. It's 802-656-2109. Bob, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Judy.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.